All right, everybody, welcome back to Examining the Witness. In this episode, as you can see, we are going to be diving into the Marsh area with all those wonderful, deliciously difficult tetromino puzzles. This episode is probably going to be one of the chiller, more casual episodes because maybe one of the longer ones because there's just so many puzzles, and there's not a lot of super detailed thematic content to this area in terms of statues and audio logs and symbolism and stuff. Instead, the Marsh is a real showcase for the gameplay of the Witness, which wasn't even the object of the game. I thought this was interesting when Jonathan Blow was creating this. I learned this recently from a talk that he was talking about, that I always kind of wondered what order did the ideas come to him? And the first idea was that of the environmental puzzles, and it would be cool to make a game about that. And then he thought, well, I kind of need a fake mechanic to get people into the game. And so then kind of created the whole line maze drawing stuff. And then
that's the most central experience.
Yeah, exactly. And then it became just unexpectedly rich and interesting to create all these interlocking line mechanics.
Deliberately kind of started out with being this is boring.
I'm always mystified when there's media that's about multiple different things, I'm wow, which one of these is it really about?
Yeah.
And it's about both. But so in the Witness's case, the environmental puzzles was the idea that came first, and then the line puzzles were built around that. But they turned out to be so rich and interesting, and the Marsh, more than anywhere, is a demonstration of the full possibilities of those mechanics, because they it's one of the most complex rule sets of the Witness. It's one of the hardest, and just due to its placement on the far side of the island here, it's one that you're likely to get to later on in the game. And so by the time you get to it, you've sort of you've done this a couple of times before, right? You kind of know what's going on, and as a result it's less surprising and amazing when you run into these puzzles, but you're more able to kind of introspect and recognize your own experience, and also because it's harder, you're more able to kind of see what's going on as you're doing it, versus in those first tutorial areas you're sort of oh yeah, I guess you separate the black and white tiles and stuff. So anyways, all that makes the Marsh kind of a stronghold of the panel puzzles, and of the kind of scientific, analytical, hierarchical, objective third-person perspective on reality that it represents. But it also means that there's just a ton of puzzles. So this episode will probably take a while as we just go through all these puzzles, and I'll try not to get stuck too bad. And I'll try to remember that one that everybody on the Witness Reddit gets stuck on, where the blocks are actually 2 spaces apart and not 1 space apart. But we'll see how it goes. I might forget by the time I get down there. But at least you can absorb all the beautiful colors in this area. This is another Witness dev plot thing.
I really liked it. I came to this area early on because I loved the colors so much.
Yeah, very beautiful, despite being surrounded by my least favorite Witness tree, this ugly, supposed to be eucalyptus, but it only looks bad compared to all the other trees. But I don't have that much to say about this statue, except that it's cool. Of course, there's 2D, 3D going on, right? She's painting. It's funny that there's real splotches of color here. That's almost kind of a joke, because it's
right.
They kind of wish that they could have. Well, and it's it's kind of dumb to have real paint on a statue. Couldn't you have just put that in there in statue? But no, obviously you can't put paint splotches. you can't sculpt paint splotches.
Wait, maybe she has a whole painting there and you just can't see it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So anyways, that's just, I don't know, referencing the scenicness of this whole scene. They apparently struggled for a long time trying to make the Marsh look beautiful. They knew that it was going to be a marsh because of the gameplay. They wanted to have those tetrameter blocks that you're standing on, and they're like moving and rotating and stuff, so they needed it to be over water.
Oh.
But they kept trying all these different things, and it just kept looking like a swamp, or what, you know, it just looked like this for. I know it looks nice, but they evidently struggled with it, and then they decided to make it into the super crazy.
Yeah, if the whole area was just this kind of green and white, it would not be nearly as nice.
Yeah. So one thing before we get into this, you know, long and epic sequence of deduction, we're gonna run over here. Okay, so we have this statue here, right, reaching up. This is like one of the hugest and most, you know, notable, you know, artworks anywhere in the game. Obviously, it's like key symbolism. But we're not going to talk about it in this episode because this episode is already probably going to be like long and full of a lot of puzzles, and I'm trying to break things up, and I can't figure out if the attitude of the statues is like particularly tied to this area, you know? I mean, it's kind of, you know, it's like island wide. All right, so we'll talk about the statues later, but let's get into this wild sequence of puzzles. Starting with the can't go wrong opener. So we get into it. Of course, the colors here. We got the red of the swamp, and then this green, which is also the swampy color out here. Oh my god, I messed up. It's gonna be a long road. So this starts teaching you need, of course, the right number of blocks to be enclosed in the shape. But here it's just pass-fail based on the number, right? But in this one, you could draw something like this, and then it fails you because it's the wrong orientation. You know, you don't get to rotate them. And then you might think, okay, so like the shape is this teaches you that the shape is important, although there's some chance that you do this right just by accident. This board is interesting because all of these breaks are here to prevent you from drawing 3 out of 4 squares that you might consider drawing, right? If you try and do something here, you can't get through. If you try and do that upper right corner, you can't make it. And so this is kind of like hoping that you'll like get lazy and do some other way of getting the 4 squares like this, and then you'll fail out, and then you'll realize like, oh, it's 4. So it's just interesting to see the design this makes you, right? Like probably when they were prototyping this area or something, this started out as just a 4 square in the middle of a 3 by 3 square with no breaks, but then too many people just like, you know, blitzed through it and didn't really understand. And so by putting the breaks there, it makes it like easier to screw up. So you even try and make the square this way, and it's like, no, you know, so then you might be tempted to like correct it somehow. Of course, your only option for making the square is to go around like that.
I think, to me, that it's actually a very simple answer why they're doing it that way. Go look at that 3 again. You go up first, and you to go around that 3, and then your instinct for the 4 is to do the same thing, go up first and then go around the 4. And the witness, you're still learning how to draw lines in the witness all the time. Like after you've completed the game, maybe you figure this out, but when you're still in the beginning puzzles of any area, it's easy to forget that you can go the opposite way around, or go the edge the other direction, or go like so I think this might be just like keeping you on your toes that way.
Yeah, that's an important thing to remember, because of course, like, you don't need to know anything to enter here except the tutorial castle, you know, so all of the beginning areas have to pull this kind of multifunction thing where like this is teaching you like, hey, remember from the tutorial zone, or maybe just sprint it over here without even doing the tutorial. Like, you know, you like can go multiple ways to enclose a shape. So that's definitely a lesson that gets reiterated. Yeah, here we get to learn that there are we can close our shape like this. And this, because there's just such a wide option space, you know, we learn that
Maybe you thought it had to be in the top or the bottom or the right side or something when you're making it. So now hopefully you're starting to pick up on it can be anywhere in the shape.
Yeah, one of these like teaching theories of the witness is that in the beginning, it's like it's very easy to get it right by accident. Here you have no other choice. Here you have like a 1/3 chance out of the 3 lines that you can draw that you'll get it correct. And then that gets harder and harder as it introduces more possibilities. So by the time you've completed this, then like there's no way to get this right without understanding it just statistically. This is also interesting because it's a wider board. It forces you to enclose some other spaces. Just like obviously the only enclosed space is like this. It's not like it has to be on this side of the line or something.
Yeah,
like
no,
that.
that's huge. That's a big. I didn't realize that's what that was teaching. Yeah.
So then we get access to this right away, but there's a lot to learn in the witness, and so it's going to come over here and have this backside of the panel, which is teaching us about the interaction of multiple symbols,
have
right?
To be together.
Yeah. So here it's like they can be separate, they can be together, but the numbers have got to add up. You learn how to put them together. This is an interesting one because you learn. Oh yeah, like I'm unfolding this 3 into a a multi-square shape.
You might look at that 3 and be like, that 3 is telling me that there's a blank spot there. So like make sure that there's nothing in there. But you can actually put the 1, so it's fine.
Yeah. Yes, then you start thinking this kind of funny way of like, okay, this expands to here and this expands to here. And then when you start thinking like that, you might think, oh shit, now I have this problem. Like it's like offset now relative to the last one, so how's that going to work? Except that no, they can actually expand into any direction, not just into the top left. You see, these all have this, they're located in the bottom left corner of their respective shape, and then this one, it's like, no, this is on the right side of its little pair.
I see.
And now, to make it even more clear, they smush them together such that the shapes would be overlapping. Like, some players might be tempted to like go like this. It's like, okay, it's the cube and then the 2, but you can't have overlapping shapes, at least not yet. So it's that same format.
That's crazy. That 4 isn't even. I didn't even pick up on that. If I had gotten stuck later, I could have come back here. But that 4 isn't even inside its own shape. Like it's up above.
Yeah. Yep.
Huh.
Yep.
And now they're not even in.
Yeah, so you get to see this kind of funny combinatorial thing where you can move the shapes around anywhere, right?
Yeah, as long as they're inside the giant.
And I can't imagine the kind of coding that has to like Jenga it out and like by trial and error see if
so
you can,
if you do that, that won't work, even though
yes,
it's the right
this will
number
not
of
work.
squares.
The right number of squares, but you'd be splitting the 4 in 2.
Yeah, gotcha.
So
the Witness is a good game. You heard it here.
Heard it here first. Heard it here first in 2022. Witness is a good game. So now for this last one, we do have to break them apart.
Or just flip them sideways. Yeah.
All right. And now we've got this beautiful blue. We also have environmental puzzles. We have a bunch of shadow-based environmental puzzles. It's funny that there are a lot of shadow-based environmental puzzles in this game, but none of them hang out in the shadow area, right? There's this area is full of all these finicky little like platform-based environmental guys, and then over in the mangrove treehouse zone, there's like those funny trees that cast shadows based on their outline. But those like too many environmental puzzles that would kind of disrupt the like Zen kind of like simulation of nature of the autumn forest area, so they don't want to have to shoehorn all that in there.
When you said the mangroves, you meant the shady tree zone?
No. The shady trees zone, like the shady trees autumn forest is a shadow-based mechanic.
But you mean there's also shadows in the mangrove area?
Yeah. You'll recognize them when we go over.
Whoa. You're just going to show the mangroves?
I'm just over here. It's real close. We've already made a video on it. I'm talking about these guys, Like, they could have put some weird trees in the shadow area of the, but they didn't. They put him here. So anyways, that's just kind of an interesting note on like the kind of deliberately avoiding having environmental puzzles in the Zen area.
Don't conflict with the message.
Yeah. But anyway, so this area as a super logic zone has there's some kind of beautiful environmental puzzles here, but these ones, like, it seems like everybody has a different first environmental puzzle, but these I would say are unlikely to be, like, this is not going to strike anyone as like, wow, like this really looks like the mechanic of the game, or like how funny is it that there's this curving path here? It's like, yeah, it's obviously a walkway and whatnot. Similarly, these shadows are not gonna,
like, they make sense. They're coming from the railing. I don't know what you want from me.
And yet these things are so obviously purposeless that if you do know about the environmental puzzle, then it's obvious that this is part of something. So this is one of those ones, because this is a very logic-y area. These environmental puzzles are like meant to be really logicked through by like signaling to you like, okay, this is definitely something, and then it's such a screwed up shape to make it like very obvious that there's like no direction from which you could see this, except for the shadows. So we will move this along here, and yeah. So of course, the fun thing about all of these platforms, they have the yellow dots, so it's like you're on the tetrominoes, and then you get this puzzle where the only two valid solutions are the two like permanent resting places of the
right. You can't just stick it in the middle
of the puzzle. Yeah, you sadly cannot stick it in the middle because it's not a rotating piece yet or anything. So you can either glom it onto this side, which is its current resting place, or you can glom it onto the other side.
I feel so bad for whoever solves this puzzle that way. I mean, I guess it lights up and you're like, okay, where does it go? And then it's like nothing happened. I wonder how people just left this area because they couldn't figure out what to do after that.
So here we have kind of a motion puzzle where we're squeezing a very long environmental puzzle. You can see the trail is now stretching all the way across the screen into this very short space. When it comes all the way across, I guess it'll move almost right onto the puzzle source or past it. So it's this kind of paradoxical thing where the shadow.
Wow, it ends before it starts.
Yeah, exactly. Huh. And then there's another one that pulls this similar trick where you have to squeeze it into this small space, going the opposite way. But for time's sake, I will not complete that environmental puzzle because it's basically the exact same thing. I can appreciate this beautiful cyan. One interesting thing, I mean, I love the colors in the Witness and the hyper-saturated look of it all. This area has to do a lot of interesting work, finding things that keeping the kind of color palette, like handling the rapid shift in color palette. So over here on the opposite side, we have this kind of like green and white look that it maintains to make the swamp look good. And then we do a red, and you see the grass color shifts to a much lighter green because that just looks better. As opposed to the darker green over there. We have some red foliage, and then here we don't get too much of a color shift because it's a smaller area, although it more abuts the gray of the rocks and walkways. And then we can see as we go up here, soak in some more of these colors. We have a beautiful, we have sort of like a bluish area. And then over here, this becomes like a purple and yellow area, which is interesting actually because the color symbolism of these develops into like yellow and then this sort of blue as like negative space, which we'll see later. So anyways, it's interesting that like this whole area starts out with like natural colors and then progresses to like more and more surreal. And you can see that the plant colors themselves, they're like dark over here, then they turn light to complement the red, and then over here they turn this sort of like unreasonable yellow color just because that looks good against the purple. So there's a cool sort of like color palette blending game.
That's good environmental design over there.
Yeah, and they use the stands of tall grass to like
Oh, block
prevent
your
you,
view.
yeah, block your view so that you're like totally just in the red world and not getting distracted by like the bright green that would look ugly next to it or something like that. So anyways, that is that. Yeah.
You can solve those puzzles you're right next to.
Yeah, I sure can.
Or can you?
So here we're just, this is doing a classic witness type thing where we're recombining a bunch of puzzle ideas, and you know we've got the same elements in the same place, but there's a break in the most natural place to go, so we've got to go with an alternate technique. And then I think this is going to pull the same trick maybe. Let's see. How does this even work? Okay, we got to use the big vertical line to account for this guy, and then one extra because the vertical is actually too long, and then the 2 gets transposed up here. Alright, and then here we don't get the same elements repeated, we're just like playing crazy games. This was kind of funny because here all of the elements have to be joined together into one large shape, but here like the elements are too small to meet up with each other, so you actually have to break them up into two
sets,
different pairs. Yeah, you just reverse each pair.
Those are hard puzzles,
yeah.
by the way.
Yeah. We're kind of doing our way through. So we also have this backdoor zone over here, which we'll not go down because that's part of the secret statue stuff that we're going to talk about in the special episode. But we still got to solve this puzzle, which I think we can just keep these all separate, can't we? Yeah, that's kind of funny. All right.
It's like, did you notice
So
what
you guys were always
happens?
yeah. And then look at that. They bring them together. They bring them in from a 5x5 to a 4x4, just like in the fortress area. Kind of brings that back to mind when they take all the logic puzzles of the 4x4, and you're like, I mean, of the way over in. I should be able to see it from here. In yonder castle that's blocked by some strategic trees.
You're not thinking about that. You're solving these puzzles.
Yeah. So you know, you're looking down on the different mazes, and you think, oh, it's easy, I'll just put the solutions together from all the different mazes, except that actually the grid has been smushed together, and so the logic symbols are all interfering with each other, and you have to come up with a totally custom solution, which in this case is going to be, who knows, I mean, I can make this H shape, but then I can't come back here, so okay, it is going to be like a wacky tooth shape like this. We're going to bring that line over to the far side, and then the 2 L's inhabiting here. Sweet. So anyways, like I said, tune in for that statue episode. It's going to be awesome. But this area is not totally devoid of thematic content. Far from it. In some ways, we're gonna get a really awesome Feynman video, and I also, you know, even though there's not a lot of statues around, the environment and architecture of this place really speaks to me, and feels very evocative of the kind of like scientific attitude that the game is trying to
This
communicate.
is the most like strong puzzle mechanic, and it's the most kind of, I don't want to say generic puzzle solving, but it's the most about puzzle solving. Like, it's hypothesis, test, fail. Like, you really find out, like, first that each dot represents a square, and then that the squares can be side by side, and then that the squares can be separated, and that the squares can overlap, and that the squares can, spoilers, rotate. So it's really like one step at a time, that all the different possibilities, which ones are valid and which ones are invalid.
Yeah, it's. I mean, it is interesting. This area, like I was saying, it's where people can kind of be
It's really
maybe the
blatant how it's
most.
teaching.
Yeah, it's like where it's the most apparent that the game is like not just like teaching you some stuff, but like really teaching you this.
Like how to think.
Yeah, it's teaching you this kind of scientific method of thought where you often have to like go back and be like, wait a second, like I don't understand how these combine. Like let me go to that sequence over there where we learned about how the puzzles combine, and then I'll like resolve that and then come back here. So this sequence is teaching us again, just like that sequence. It's just like
What I don't understand
like
is these seem easier. Like
well,
why are these?
they are, but they're different. See, the other ones were primitive tetrominoes. They were like, and the ones up here, even though this was like difficult, it's like nice red color, like hard mode tetrominoes.
Yeah.
Then we come back here and we're like back in tutorial land, but it's tutorialing is and notice the color goes back to green.
Yeah.
That tutorial color, right?
Yeah.
Versus like up there it's like red, like this is like hardcore, but it's not a new concept. You're just applying what you learned before.
No,
And then
showing
it's
that you
green,
understand.
like
Yeah.
don't worry, this is easy now, but you're learning new things.
Okay,
So
okay.
pay attention. So in the previous things, we just had basic tetromino blocks like this, right? We didn't have like this one, which trips up literally every single person on the witness Reddit. It's 2 spaces apart, people. It's not 1 space apart. But we also have all of these. Like these are just 2 dots diagonally, and so this is teaching you that the blocks can combine in a new way, right? It's got a hole in the middle. You gotta.
It's pointing you towards the next puzzle.
Well, and before you've just combined shapes
Side by side.
and this is teaching you to think like, no, you can superimpose them. You're filling these in as,
Okay.
you can imagine these tiles. So these 2 belong to this one, and then these 2 belong to this guy. So anyways, kind of a simple thing, but one of the things that I wish that I could communicate more in these videos is the real process of going through the hypothesis. I mean, there's plenty of like blind let's plays and stuff, I'm sure, so you can go check that out. But
Like all the false assumptions.
yeah,
it's.
I mean, I can go through and tell you like what each one of these is intended to teach.
Yeah.
But there really are like a surprising number of kind of like alternate interpretations that are possible, and then even when there aren't any plausible alternate ways that you could think about the symbols, people can persist in these puzzles because it's this wordless communication that's just through example, and because you're learning not just the rules of the puzzles, but you're also learning like the whole philosophy, like the idea that the witness is teaching you these syntactical rules and stuff. So people they kind of just are going through on feel, and they're learning both the content and the method. And so there's a lot of kind of like false starts or sort of like fuzzy half understandings.
Oh yeah,
people will like.
That's my favorite thing about the witness.
Yeah.
Because most logic games, you have to understand before you can like put the thing down. With the witness, I can like start drawing the line to look at it. I can just complete the puzzle over and over again, and I'm not. I mean, every once in a while, a panel will turn off and force me back, but it encourages thinking out partially by doing and trying. And I really, that's the way I like to do puzzles.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Yeah. So this, like, what is this zone, right? It's like a swamp. It has these weird, really bright colors, which are not natural colors of, ordinary creatures. This kind of reminds me of like a mining pit or something, almost like a tailings dump where we have like cobalt and like
copper,
all this kind of toxic stuff that's like turning the water weird colors. It also reminds me of like at Yellowstone, the like extreme temperature pools that have these sort of like amazing rainbow colors and stuff. And we could probably like get some images of like really beautiful lakes up here.
They're hard to believe they're real.
Yeah. And it also sort of reminds me of I don't know, just like different marshes, and it makes me think of chemistry. Like, do these have different pH levels? Like what's that flower, that hydrangeas,
Yeah,
right? That
hydrangea.
turn different colors depending on the pH of their,
Well, yeah,
or
why
how
are
people will.
hydrangeas? I mean, that's not why hydrangeas change color, but I'm really. That's funny that there are not hydrangeas in this area. They'd fit so well.
Yeah. Or like, flamingos eating shrimp and turning pink and stuff.
Maybe this is another GDP generating area that we live in, and they're
Yeah.
and they're selling like extra red flowers.
Yeah. Like when they create blue roses by taking
Yeah.
white roses and
Yeah.
growing them in blue
No,
water
all the
and
time
stuff.
in grocery stores
Yeah.
they do this now.
Yeah. Well, so the GDP generating activity here, I think, is actually, well, it's two things. First, this is like clearly like a sciencey research station, right? We have like this area is being like monitored. The water is being separated into different pools so that the different ecology and like the bacteria that grow in these pools can be evaluated. And the water flow from one to the next is being regulated probably. And the so it's this like total science research station. The architecture is like kind of very I don't even really know how I'd
It's kind
reference
of
this, but it's just
like
like
a
modern.
military base. Like
Yeah, it's
modular,
kind of
yeah.
like weird, like
This is not
NASA, like some college is doing some research place out here.
Yeah, it's not for living in. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. We have all this infrastructure of like pumps and things. So this is like a very managed and yet natural environment, right? It's not like the cool, like kind of like crazy lab inside the mountain that's like
The
hostile,
hydroponics.
like you're in some kind of Area 51 Manhattan project that's like full of like Frankenstein abomination experiments that are like playing God and pushing the limits of human knowledge. This is like they're studying chemistry, they're studying biology, they're just doing kind of like academia type stuff here, looking at how one pool does something and the other doesn't, and like what happens when we raise the saltiness by 5%.
I'm not sure if you're going in a particular place with this, but I just realized that this is a hilarious contrast with the hydroponics color bunker.
Yeah.
Because I always notice like that's weird. They're both science. They both have colors. Like, but one is for the panels or something. Like, what is this doing?
Mm-hmm.
I just realized that like this is science in nature.
Yes.
And then the color
Right.
bunker
Totally controlled
is bringing
environment.
plants
Yeah.
into controlled environments.
Yeah, that's true.
How did I never notice that
That's true.
before?
Yeah, so this is like
Wow.
science a little bit more out in the world and
Yeah.
stuff.
Huh.
But it's interesting because it's one of the most hard-nosed, the tetrominoes is like, it's just pure panel. Like, you might as well just not, there's no significance to this at all. It's just a pure artistic representation of the ideas
Yes.
in the game. It's not, versus the color bunker is like this super sciencey themed area, but it's like science interrogating the mechanics of perception. It's figuring out about light and wavelength. It's almost like the science version of like the monastery or something. It's like the monastery is like trying to teach you about direct perception. The science area is like trying to like study perception, or like trying
like
to
rods and cones.
Yeah, it's like as close as science can come in the real world before we get into like the magic of the mountain stuff. It's like as close as science has been able to come to like really understanding human experience and being able to bridge that gap between the first person. We'll talk about this so much more in the color area, which would be a less casual and more serious discussion, precisely because I don't know, color and vision and stuff are just so rich to talk about.
And it's actually studying something. Whereas this one is just like, hey, like squares, patterns.
Yeah.
Like determining things.
Yeah. So I think the aesthetics of this zone, I mean, it's academic, it's sciencey, it's very modern, right? It's built by the more recent people in the island, but contemporaneous with the color bunker, I'd say. Like you have you don't have concrete around here, but you would if they needed to build anything out of concrete. Everything's out of steel, but there's no like crazy magic like how there is in the mountain. But otherwise, I'd say it's like one of the most modern structures on the island, like modern looking.
Yeah.
So it's of that sort of scientific age. To my mind, it's kind of like, so it's totally on that science side, but it's also totally like mundane in a way, which maybe ties into the mundanity of the puzzles, as opposed to being something trickier like reflections or color or even the weird suns, like the stars that you pair up into groups, which is like, I'm gonna be a little bit of a hater on biology here, but like in the Feynman video, not the audio log that we'll encounter later, but the in the audio log that we'll encounter later, Feynman talks about this kind of hierarchy of the sciences, and we like biology is, we'll talk about that, but biology is kind of like square in the middle of that. It's like, these like evaluating how the lake photosynthesis happens at different pHs or whatever, that's like about as distant as you can get from like trying to figure out the fundamental mystery of the universe and like the nature of consciousness and stuff. I mean, you might figure out some stuff about cell metabolism, but this kind of strikes me as like this kind of meticulous like stamp collecting science that's just like, well, the most interesting thing might be like, why is there something instead of nothing? And the second most interesting thing might be like, like what's up with like, human consciousness and how are our brains architected and how do we think about the world? And the third most interesting thing might be like, what are the fundamental laws of physics and like the particles and stuff and the fields and how did time begin? And the fourth most, and then it gets down to like, well, but the 100th most interesting thing is like, and all those other things seem like less tractable, but like if we want to figure out about like bacteria, like, evolution and like cell metabolism, we could just like wall off these lakes and like put different amounts of salt in each one and just like see what colors they turn, and like we'll gather some data and like, I know it doesn't seem relevant to anything right now, but like maybe it'll come in handy in our wider search for truth, right?
Yeah.
Like it all helps.
Yeah. It's just like, let's understand everything just for the sake of understanding it, and like,
exactly. That's kind
because.
of, that's like the attitude that the aesthetic of this area brings. Like, look at all these weird wires and stuff. Like what? There's just these,
everything
like,
is so weirdly
they're just
pointless.
monitoring it. Yeah. And
it's like, why are they doing this? I guess because they can.
Yeah, but I feel like that is a nod to the hierarchical, or when I say hierarchical, I mean that like comes off as like a word with like a bad connotation, like nobody likes their boss and stuff, but like the piece by piece, modular, non-holistic, the like reductionistic aspect of science where everything fits together, right? Because in fact, when you study the freaking bacteria, it does actually end up teach you about the big picture. One of the funny things that I like is like the NASA science missions to other planets, and I'm a huge space fan. I like work in the aerospace industry. Sometimes I see these NASA missions and they're like, we're gonna do a lander on Mercury, and I'm like, why do we need to land on Mercury? Like there's just rocks there,
It's not going to be that different.
Yeah,
it's
like
just a
what?
lot hotter.
We're not, and NASA will try and spin you this BS, like we're trying to answer the big questions, like are we alone? And I'm like, well, Mercury's definitely alone. Like there's no reason to go there. And they'll have these matrices where they talk about all the different reasons, and they will list, and this is what I find so funny, they have these like, I don't know, congressionally mandated or whatever, like science themes, which are like genuine things, like how did life evolve, like how did the solar system form, like what are planets like so we can understand how planets might form in other solar systems, and like how did the universe originate, and like all these big picture questions that are legitimately relevant to like philosophy that I, as a human in like lost in the universe, would like to have answers to.
Right.
And
probability
then,
of another Earth.
Yeah, and then they would like break that down like so many levels until you get to like, like it's interesting that, well, maybe it'd be like we should learn about the cores of planets because we don't really know that much about the cores of planets, and like that would help us understand like planet formation better. And then like, well, Mercury is interesting because it's kind of like a planetary core without a surface because it got stripped off long ago, or like maybe because it's so close to the sun, and so maybe some of this like weird rock geology is like relevant to, and so it's like so many steps down that it feels like, okay, like I guess that I have now been convinced that this is like an appropriate use of like my tax dollars as like a inquiring seeker of truth, but like who out there is like so excited about these rocks? Like how could you manage to care about the thing that's like 14 levels of like sub question down. But in fact, there's like billions of people in this world, and the questions are very complex. And science is this method that builds up the rules over time. They all
Right.
interlock and overlap and build on each other.
You might not be able to see it, but somebody used that in order to
Yeah,
get where you are.
exactly. And so it's like you do need the guy who's like spends his entire working career just like trying to figure out how to like build a
What
better
pH
lens for the
bacteria
iPhone
most
camera.
happy at.
Yeah, exactly. Or like why this bacteria can handle a certain range of conditions and that one can't, and stuff like that. So anyway, so that's probably like reading a whole lot into just like a rainbow swamp, but. But that is just, I promise you guys this is going to be a casual episode, and that's what comes off to me in the in this setting here is like this kind of like random like bio eco studying stuff.
Desire to just like figure stuff out.
Yeah, just
Even when there's
categorizing
no
species and
clear
stuff.
pathway to it being actually answering anything we're interested in.
Yeah, and putting together these little pieces, just as the area of this theme is like literally fitting together jigsaw pieces. And you're putting together all these pieces and then learning like how that like it eventually builds up this huge edifice, and that's like the advantage of scientific style thinking versus the whole problem with the first person kind of like conscious awareness and the sort of like the headless way and like Zen Buddhism and Advaita Vedanta and all this kind of stuff is that it's difficult to communicate the truths. You can't just write a paper being like, "Hey, I separated the water in this lake into two types, and then one time turned red." You have to like you try and use these words, and then people don't really understand what you're saying, and it's very difficult to communicate. It's very difficult to even understand an introspect. We can't just like bring like chemistry strips and like put them up our noses and figure out what our state of mind is.
A lot more respect for the pedantic words that science invents all the time, because they really can communicate about like very fine points by inventing all these languages, and it's really obnoxious, but they can do it.
Yeah, and I mean one of the remarkable things is that some of the religious communities that have been mentioned in these audio logs, like like Zen Buddhism in the forest area, and like some of the Christian writings of like Nicholas of Cusa and the other quoted philosophers, like that they have managed to build up at all like a kind of shared, and in some cases like in some of the Buddhist traditions and things have like really managed to get a lot of kind of like empirical like introspective work done, and build up an understanding that is passed down from person to person and is kind of make it into a communal project that grows over time, but still it's quite difficult, and it kind of like pales in comparison to the cumulative power of science and technology. By contrast, you can have these like sort of amazing super insights that are possible when you're like just directly looking at experience and not like reading some academic paper about like Mercury or something. And it seems like in some sense like the final experience of the answer to like really internalize all of these mysteries and things that science is also trying to investigate, it seems like like the experience will have to be more on the meditative side or something, like you don't want to just read like the solution to the universe in some book. You want to like have it somehow be transformative to like
fully understand it all together at once.
Yeah, or even go beyond understanding to like have it like change the way that you go about the world, or like just change
who you are,
the way that you understand things or something. So anyway, it's just more about that duality.
Well, let's get somewhere else. We've been staring
Yeah,
at
for
the
sure,
same spot for a bit.
There's a lot of different options for colors. Here we got to figure out how to rotate these. This is another kind of green tutorial zone, teaching us with these canted icons about how they can be rotated.
I really appreciate you talking about this area, because I like that it's both a celebration and a critique of science, being like you get too obsessed with the little stuff, but also it can build up to this good thing. So it's acknowledging both the good and bad of that way of thought.
Yep. Yep. Yep.
And I feel that. I really dislike how you're limited to these walkways in this section. It feels very oppressive to me.
Yeah, this is one of the most annoying areas of the witness to navigate. Not really because of the walkways, but because of these things, which like have everything cut off. But I don't know. That's how it's got to be. So here we have this interesting. Of course, there's always a little bit of ruins, right? Because it doesn't quite make sense that things would be this cut off. If you're a real academic researcher, you'd want to race all around. So you know we have some bits that have been missing and chopped
Some
and
entropy.
stuff. And here, after just going through the tutorial on the rotaty pieces, we get a little rotaty puzzle here. And interesting, we get different colors. So we'll have to see if that comes up later in this area or maybe elsewhere on the island, like in the town. The notion of different color tetrominoes. I don't think it plays any like there's no problem if they're grouped together, unlike in the color bunker. So this might be kind of like a one-off mechanic, just designed to work as a map here. Yeah.
Location, yeah.
But and I thought this was so hilarious that the wires loop around in a clockwise versus anti-clockwise direction to indicate the direction that this is going to turn in, and that is relevant because there is a goddamn puzzle over here. And in order to get it to the end, we probably have to turn it all the long way around. How are we going to do that? I mean, so we obviously want to connect the blue.
Well, you're standing on it, so you don't have to connect to where you came from.
Yeah.
You can
well,
connect
I know, but right now it's pointing out to the... Oh, yeah, that's true. Okay, yeah, well, then we should go to blue and purple, I suppose. Let's see if we can get this. Oh, wait a second.
You would want to get the circle first, so you'd have to be...
Is there a way to... Yeah, there must be. Yeah, I'm just gonna do it the other way around.
High speed.
That is so funny because all these can be solved.
It's just the direction.
This is actually quite an interesting puzzle because these items on here are like not mirror reversible because they match onto the actual map. That's why they have this one-off mechanic, because it's like relevant which side is on the actual map. And then yeah, so you can like mirror reverse it, and then that causes this to spin the other direction. Sorry, I would be more articulate if I wasn't waiting for this thing to come into view. But you see what I mean? So like each of the solutions on there is mirror reversible if you don't care about the rotation direction. So now we're spinning around this way.
Like you could draw the same shapes starting from either.
Yeah, so now I'm just drawing the mirror reverse shape, and the game is respecting that mirror reverse shape by having the platform rotate in the other direction, which is really funny. So when does it become a circle? There we go. Oh no.
Oh, are you standing in the
You
wrong
gotta
place?
stand in the air, yeah.
Oh.
All right. Well, we'll just nod and say we did, even though it's so beautiful to watch those zip over there. But anyways, really makes you engage with the back and forth nature of this map and take the long way around.
Again, like you were kind of puzzling out, understanding.
Oh,
like,
look at this.
The directions.
Each one of these is a. It's just like a little fan or something. Yeah, it's like a little turbine. It's like spinning the water or something.
You're like,
that's awesome.
You're choosing which fluids to connect and disconnect from each other.
Yes, yes.
So now blue will be totally locked off and no blue will flow.
We got this purple route over here. Seemingly a dead end, but tune in for that statue video and you're gonna be amazed. So into the blue zone, you can see how yellowish everything, all the foliage has become in order to properly contrast with the purple.
Yeah, green and purple probably would look kind of gross and sickly.
And these panels have now also taken on the same color as the foliage. It's another tutorial section, but instead of green, it's kind of like, yeah, medium, yeah. Alright, let's see. How the heck are we going to do this? I think these are going to all have to be separate one way or another. No, because we can bring this guy in. Okay. Like this, we're rotating the 3 as well. Alright, everything's rotating, it's chaos. One interesting thing, these pairs are always interesting because you can't put them in isolation. They need to be combined with something. And so you know that this and this are going to join together in some kind of shape like that.
Oh, yeah, I guess they could.
Yeah. In this case, I think I'm actually going to have to go around. Oh, I don't know. And then I guess we'll take the 6, and then we could just have these two guys combined to form a little interlocking shape up there.
More interlocking.
Oh yeah, okay, so now we have these guys who are going to have to be united by...
But they can also rotate.
Yeah, oh dear, yeah. Yeah, what the heck?
What if you put a dot... No, you can't have a dot in the sound. Anyway, they can become a 6, which is a nice, easy shape.
Yes, I suppose so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, so I just have to have this guy going out here, and then, like, a 6. Oops. A 6. And then...
The dot by itself.
Yeah,
Yay.
you just by itself. Awesome. Alright, now we get access to a whole lot of fun. Look at these little pumps going. Clearing that water out.
Oh, is the water actually draining?
Yeah, it's actually draining, pumps going.
I thought it just...
Yeah. So now we go into this sweet little underground zone. And why is the witness doing this? Having like multiple stories? Because there's so many puzzles in this area. If they were all lined up in the surface, it would be
very cluttered.
It would take forever. So this is doing the Taiji style thing of having stuff.
Might also be so then you like don't feel like you have to solve the whole thing.
Oh, this is to cast part of the shadow for
the line.
Or I think maybe it blocks the line strategically.
I don't know.
We might have to revisit that just to figure out what that super weird piece of metal is.
Like, why that shape too? It looks like a solar panel or something.
Yeah. Alright, they come down underwater, and this is interesting. You get this...
Wait, why is it yellow?
Yellowish glow. I think this is just because it's technically looking... Like, this is still bunker, and then it's looking out into this, which is yellowish.
I understand that that's kind of a yellow-green. I think that's what's happening. But I think they also just want it to be a pretty yellow.
Yeah. And you can see out there.
Is that going to be something like our perception of that color looks green because it's next to blue or something? No.
Let's just set this thing whirling so we can watch it animate.
Well, like, maybe that looks more green because it's next to this bright yellow, and then underground when it's not next to a bright yellow, it looks like its true color, which is kind of a more yellowy. Oh, you want? Oh.
Just want to see it spin.
Oh.
Yeah, boy, we're spinning. Little turbines and stuff.
Is that like a cage of plants that's being moved around?
No, it's a random cage to support the just to support the walkway, but it is overgrown with plants because it's in a swamp. So, oh, is there like a sick puzzle that shows up here or something? That would be wild. I don't think so, but it would be wild. Cool. Anyways. So another reason we went underground is because it's introducing the negative space mechanic. Alright, so look at this, okay? We got our 3, we're like, no problem. Easy, but we have this blue shape, which is subtracting 1, making it just a 2. Same trick here, subtracting 2. Then subtracting 1. Of course, this doesn't work. It has to be included in the shape in order to interact with it. And what does this become? These 4 will like perfectly fill the space, except then you're subtracting 2, which is kind of funny. And this would perfectly fill the space, but with no way to let us in. So it's kind of funny. If this didn't exist, this would actually be like impossible to complete.
Yeah.
But because it does, because it is in here,
now you can go.
You get
inside.
One little hole with which you can cut out the inside. So that's kind of funny. And of course, we have this dark blue color of the panels to match the dark blue here versus up above, regardless of the background. We've always been drawing in yellow. And
the dark blue water.
The wires, yeah, it kind of happens in this blue area where it's first introduced. The wires are yellow. Of course, we've seen this yellow and blue symbolism before, haven't we? Right? We saw it in the symmetry area.
No, this
where it
is
was
a totally
introduced.
different blue color.
Yeah, I know it's a different shade. It's darker blue. But then in the reflection area, we had like orange and dark blue. You know.
Okay.
So again, the kind of yellowy orange color is like the primary, or actually in the symmetry area, I guess bright blue is sort of more the primary, and yellow was like the color of like the reflection. Anyway, so you have this kind of like dual theme, and that.
Tell me that one side of the reflection was more important than the other side of the reflection.
I'm just talking about what was introduced first or whatever.
Yeah.
Anyways, so the yellow blue color symbolism is back, and that'll continue even though these other areas are red and purple and stuff. And furthermore, this is literal negative space in the environment. It's cut out. It's negative.
Yes.
It's like a hole in the environment. Like how this is like a bridge. How did that happen?
Because otherwise you'd be trapped here.
Oh, lol, that's funny. Okay.
You would have actually died here, but
yeah, all right.
They won't let you.
Let's go find another sweet, Starve on Island of the Witness. So anyways, I just love that it's like it's negative space in the puzzles, and to
and
illustrate
you're standing in the negative.
you're literally
cutout
standing
of the
in the
water.
cutout space of the water instead of on the platform. Oh shit! Made it. Parkour. Never let anybody tell you The Witness isn't a good action game. So you're gonna follow that blue wire all the way over here to the next most blue area, I suppose. Look at how beautiful this is. Just a continuing, like, amazing color experience here. Yeah, and we noticed that this thing is randomly bright pink on the bottom. Oh, I guess maybe because it's coming from the red area, like you know, like it gets dyed or something by all the water flowing
moving
through.
it back and forth.
Yeah, like the red stuff gets permeated. I don't know. It doesn't really have any real explanation. It's just a really great looking color palette. And we have an obvious environmental thing, except we cannot click it because it doesn't quite match the color. And so we gotta have a lot of fun here. Here we have that very same puzzle that's up top, so we don't have to run up there and do
Oh,
parkour.
really? Okay.
Yeah, unfortunately. And
Yeah, just send it back.
so
Get
yeah.
a little bit faded. I like that weird color that you have on that puzzle itself.
Yeah, and then it's just gonna.
Alright, make sure you get it right about there. Right about
Oh
there.
yeah.
That's wild.
And if we're quick, we can get this one as well.
You're cheating. It's only because you know
totally
it's
legit.
there.
Totally legit.
Yeah, but it's not the same as seeing like the perfect circle and seeing the perfect end line.
For a lot of these, you can never see an actual perfect circle on the screen, which is funny. For some, there like you have like a long ellipse, but then you're looking at it at an angle so that it makes a perfect circle
Right.
projection on your screen.
Yeah.
But for others, you never get that. It's like
You
a
just
perfect
know
circle
that
in
it
real
would've
life.
been,
For
yeah.
instance, like in the kind of moon paths up on the monastery, where the monastery
Yeah.
has this big stone circle. You know, you never get to look at that straight on. So it's never like a perfect.
You telling me The Witness is a poorly made, inconsistent game?
No, I'm not telling you that.
Okay.
So it's time to discuss something else about this room, which is that there's a ton more puzzles that we have to do, and that this area is going to take forever. But we did say that at the beginning, so no worries. But before we get there, look at what is actually happening. Beyond this like cool little environmental puzzle, and the beautiful color palette, it's like this is a pipe. It's filling with glowy pink stuff from this strange bacteria water that's being studied and manipulated, and its temperature and pH and salinity and so forth very carefully regulated. And it's flowing over here, and it's a gooey fluid that's leaking out of the pipe, and it's going into these little udders or dispensers or something, and into this tube, and then being loaded into these little containers, right? Like to create gooey glow fluid. And where is this gooey glow fluid going, right? Other parts of The Witness have had so many things like, you know,
Like the concrete was used
yeah,
to make
the quarry
the
has a
shipping
whole
container
cement
was torn
factory.
up.
Yeah, exactly. The ships have been torn up, and the container material shows up everywhere. In the symmetry area, we have the glass blower area where he's making the
right.
glass
Yeah.
panels for both the symmetry puzzles and the glass panels that show up in the fortress, the ones that you walk on. And of course, also in the quarry, we have a logging area that's making those nice,
Planks,
wood
yeah.
planks that are used to build, like this walkway right here, and like the symmetry area, like kind of artist workshop, and all over the place we have stuff being manufactured, and then used elsewhere on the island. And this is such a weird, prominent thing to be manufacturing, this like mystery science goo.
Yeah, like some activities.
So what the hell is it
happening.
for?
They put thought into this.
Yeah, and here is the theory, right? So this is positioned here precisely to make it extra clear that it is glowy, right? Like this kind of looks like a metal pipe that just happens to be a little too bright or something.
Yeah.
So they put clear tanks to make it obvious that it's transparent, and then here you have this awesome like bounce lighting because it's badass, but also just to like really make it clear what's in there. Well, guess what? I believe, and some other kind of unhinged conspiracy theorist commenters on Reddit also believe, that this goo is like being used in the lore of the game to like power the panels. Now you might say that's ridiculous, Jackson. It's a CRTV screen,
Yeah.
And some of these do kind of look like CRTV screens, but they glow in these kind of unearthly ways, and there are a number of panels that that use unique mechanics. Like in the symmetry area, we were just talking about those glass panels. like that's not a screen because you can see right through it with perfect clarity. Um, and So anyways, this is like a little bit far-fetched, and it's not too important for you to go all in on this bit of lore, but I think that these sort of like magic lines that you draw are like, these aren't just all iPads around the island or something. It's some sort of like bioluminescent, like soft
Future tech.
glass touching. Yeah, it's some kind of like magical future like witness tech that exists kind of only in the fantasy world of the game, rather than these all being like Arduinos or something. Um, and that might seem like a totally irrelevant and wacky claim, except that this feeds into the idea of, I mean, it reinforces the nature of this area as like a scientific area, right? They're not just like preserving the landscape or trying to like study nature just to like appreciate the different species of cattails and eucalyptus and stuff. Um, they're like creating, they're studying like the bacteria and the chemistry and these like kind of like hard-nosed, like fine micro details of life that you need like scanning electron microscopes and stuff to understand sometimes. And they're creating like technology from it, by harvesting this weird goo. And this is kind of a precursor, like mastering the technology of like being able to create these panels, this sort of like computer like technology, with the stuff that you get out of here, um, is a prelude to the sort of like super crazy technology that's being made in the mountain. I'll probably talk about the kind of like crazy lore of the environmental puzzles in other episodes, but the one way of reading the game, which is kind of like overly like lore-y, literal type interpretation of the game, is like, well, this island, it's kind of like this fantasy world or something. Things work differently here than in the real world, and part of the like laws of nature in this world is that these shapes are like showing up constantly, and they're sort of like part of the fabric of the world in this sort of like crazy like magical realist way. um, and But that eventually, and that humans initially noticed that and started kind of like worshiping that as like a proto religion thing. Like they're noticing the laws of nature, and aspects of reality, which is kind of like what the environmental puzzles are is a metaphor for, is like noticing fundamental experience and stuff. And started like worshiping that out in like the desert temple areas, and like developing that into proto religions, developing more of an understanding of the environmental puzzles, eventually creating the monastery, which is like a really clear way of like introducing people to like, hey, look, see, like these little puzzles are all throughout the world. um, and then and then finally in the mountain, learning to like manipulate them and make like crazy light bridges, kind of like turn nature to our will, and use the environmental puzzles, which are just this kind of like background feature of the world, into like these practical things that you can literally walk on. And then finally, of course, the highest incarnation of the technology is the kind of like castle sun gate, from the tutorial area, where you reach up and use the sun to create this like magical teleportation gate that's powered by the like cracking the code of the fundamental secrets of the physics of the witness universe or something. So kind of far fetched, but I think that is like one layer. The witness has a lot of layers. There's also the layer that's like where it's all like a VR video game developed to help people become enlightened. But I'm always into the layer of like the people that came to the island and how they built the technology and how they advanced over time. And I think this, as wacky as it is part of that story.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, I also think, on a way more kind of everyday level, um, this brings back strong memories of Riven. Um, One of the inspirations for The Witness was like creating a modern version of the video game Myst, only one where the world one of the things people liked about Myst was the world was kind of magical and surreal, but has this kind of internal coherence to it. The Witness is sort of like dialing down on the surrealism, but dialing the coherence like up to max, while still having like the totally different, like the icy mountain and the hot desert and the swamp and stuff, all next to each other. And another thing that people liked about Myst was the puzzle solving, except it's annoying to have everything be kind of like finicky and off. In the Witness, you have this totally consistent puzzle experience that's like much more meaningful and thematically deep than like just random crap like is in early puzzle games. And then in Riven, one of the most wonderful parts of that game was that a way that it brought its kind of like magical realist like this sense of like realism even amid like crazy fantasy, is that all of the different islands that you visit in Riven are like helping produce stuff that is used to make the magical books that are like important to the lore of the Myst games. So like one island is like chopping up trees and grinding them into wood chips and then making pulp for paper. And then there's an island where they're boiling water and like using that to make the paper, and they're creating ink out of this or that, and all this all this kind of stuff. And it's fun to kind of follow that industrial process. So I think this is a little bit of a nod to Riven, in that you have this tiny island that has this like wacky self-contained economy, even though like it's not really self-contained, because like where's the machine shop that's making all these complicated metal parts and such. But you have sort of like everything being made locally and used on the island to create these panels. So here we have something interesting. We got an intersection of two shapes, which could not normally happen, except that we're using our square here, and notice we're using it to delete this this middle section. Or I mean, I don't know. You could say we're deleting one of these and making this guy only 3 high so that he can stand in here. But another way of thinking of this is that they're overlapping. These two shapes are overlapping, so this square is kind of double counted. But then you have the negative square that takes out one of these guys and brings it back to just being single counted. So here we got 2, so we're going to have to lop off an additional bit.
Take off the top bit so it can be against the wall.
True.
But it still needs to overlap.
So no, this is great. This is great.
Yeah.
Sweet. Okay, this one is very fun. I remember this guy. So you can draw this shape, which handles these bottom 2 right here, except that this area is double counted. So then you can, but that's no problem because we have negative squares in here now. So then if we want to go, oh wait, these guys aren't rotating. So then we can.
So you overlap them and subtract the top layer?
Come up here. Huh? Yeah, so we're going to use the 4. Oh, okay, but this is interesting. It's introducing a negative 4, and you don't just get 4 counts to use anywhere. You actually have to subtract a square. So, yeah, how is this going to go?
I think it's the opposite. I think it's a 4. You can subtract any 4.
No, because this is it's a real shape.
Okay.
So we basically have to figure out.
So I would use the bottom right one to pick up with a single line, the one on the left.
Sorry, yeah, wait a second.
If you got it,
figured out.
Good.
You go like this, you overlap them even more by having,
Yeah.
You draw an L here and an L like that.
But now you have to put two.
And now you have 4 overlapping perfectly. And then, in order to pick up the shapes, you can just draw this guy. Put him in right there. So this shape, you get your first L, you get your second L, and they're both putting a claim on these 2, except then when you come up here to grab the 4, he's going to eliminate this square. The top 2 of the square are just singly spoken for.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
The bottom 2, yeah, I was forgetting that earlier. The bottom 2 are doubly spoken for, so they're still there when they get deleted. So you end up drawing this shape.
What the hell?
Yeah. Yeah.
All
But
right.
anyways, so that's a real test, right?
That's a good one.
And you can see how even after me playing this game and everything like that, I was still when I first looked at this, I was like, oh yeah, we just have to find 4 to subtract. I wasn't thinking about the fact that this is a shape, even though what could be more obvious,
Yeah.
But this is interesting. All right, so here this kind of is probably a nightmare without realizing the trick of
gotta get rid of the ones that are causing you trouble.
yes, the fact that the diagonals are such trouble because you can't outline them properly. So let's see, to fit this T shape in here, does this actually use up? Yes, this is a 4x4 grid and this is a 4x4 in here. So to fit this T shape in, there's going to be one that needs to be deleted, and then it's going to connect all these. Then we're going to have 3 extra guys.
Well, what you do is you place it. Okay,
Put
so
the
go
T
to the
right
top
here.
row and then go down 1. You can't rotate, so it fills in that. That way, all of the squares are touching but 1 in the bottom right corner, which you can
Yes. Yes.
Up 1.
Well, yeah, except the bottom right corner has to be in the right spot because see, if I just create the shape that maxes out.
That works. That's correct.
No, it doesn't.
It is.
What?
Because the middle of the T gets erased, and then the bottom right one gets erased because you can't touch anything. And so all of the squares are accounted for. The 2 subtractions are used.
Yeah. For some reason, I was thinking of this pip as existing over here.
No.
And then I'd have to loop one in over
You
there.
used 1, yeah.
All right. Well, I'm glad I have you around to keep me on the straight and narrow.
It's funny how neither one of us is consistently better at solving each panel.
Yeah.
Some of them I solve faster than you, some of them you solve faster than me.
And it's funny also, sometimes it feels like there's an advantage to the person who is not doing the puzzle because you can see both the experiment that's happening and also why it's wrong. But other times there's I think there's a big advantage to the person who's doing the puzzle, just because you kind of it's just confusing to have lines all over the screen. It's wait, I can't think straight, and the lines are like a thinking tool. With the sweet crocodile here. But this is not yet the room with the Feynman audio log, so that's interesting. So it comes very late in this sequence.
Most of the audio logs are... Well,
Okay.
sometimes they're divergent.
This one is hilarious. So this is a perfect cancel out shape. So you can just draw whatever, it doesn't matter. Obviously you can't separate them though.
So that's not surrounding the whole square. That's doing 0.
Yeah, you just do nothing.
Yeah.
They all just cancel out. You just zip the whole thing, except this doesn't work because these just cancel out before. But yeah. Anyway, so that's pretty fun. Alright, this is funny. So here we have a balance of shapes that's sufficient to cancel everything out, except we can't get there without cutting out a 1.
Oh no.
a -1, and so then it's like,
No.
now everything's messed up. Like, now that I cut out a -1, I guess I can like go like this and then cut out this. So now I have my 4 and my 3 being separately annihilated. This also kind of reminds me of like Feynman, like positron electron annihilations and stuff. Yeah,
Okay,
exactly.
fine.
This one's kind of sweet because we oh yeah, this is the final step. I get out here, but isn't there more? There's a bonus. Maybe the bonus, or do we get that afterwards somehow?
I do not remember.
Let's take a look. Yeah, I must be able to get over there. Sweet. Yeah, we'll come back to this interesting like 3D maze puzzle, which is a lot of fun. But for now, we gotta find an audio log to find it.
I don't remember all of the underground areas. Or even like what order you're supposed to do them in.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that is all the underground areas. Yeah, I think
No,
you're remembering.
No, I can literally see it.
Oh yeah, you're right. Okay, sorry, my bad.
And we haven't gone to the Feynman audio. Alright, so this... Which one was this activated by, I wonder? That would be interesting to know. It must have been activated like 2 and 1.
I suspect so. You probably should have paid attention to where it branched off forward. But usually it's pretty clear about that.
Yeah. Nice. So we've got some more like beautiful environmental puzzles. Only here, instead of logicking out and moving the platform farther away from us, we have to just find the right angle where, as we look through at a more extreme angle, then yeah, we're looking through more water, and the water here is actually a kind of yellowish greenish look, while and then the wall is just painted, or maybe it's this strange bioluminescent bacteria growing on the wall.
This area used to be red, and then they drained it and filled it
Yeah,
with
something like that
water.
is going on.
Yeah.
So you gotta find that exact color. Nice. Now, interestingly, both of these were yellow, like the sparkles in the air were yellow, and then we have this puzzle which has like 0 negative space anywhere on it. We're just putting together these basic pieces, and then we have this Feynman audio log. So, this is interesting, and this would be exceedingly difficult to solve were we not able to just cheat through it and stack together. Maybe, you know what? Look at this. It's a Tetris reference. All of these are classic Tetris tetrominoes.
They even have
and you gotta stack them up
2 different times because there's 2 different
orientations. Yes. Oh yes, it's every different Tetris block exactly once.
Yeah.
This guy also repeats because he's exact. Okay, that's hilarious. So this is a pure Tetris reference, and you stack them up literally like gravity, right? So you
It
go these
falls.
two,
They
and then you
fall.
think like, okay, I'm gonna put this
Oh.
in, or like maybe not quite, or something. Right. Let's see how well does this work. So we're gonna put this up, and
Now your little.
then
Now,
we're gonna take this. Is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That goes all the way up here.
now your L can fit in
Yeah, we're gonna
right
take this
there.
little, yeah, the zigzag guy,
Your other L
and
can
then the
fit in.
square. How is this, like that or something? Yeah, and then finally this top L. That's super funny. So you literally put it together like Tetris, except instead of being like screwed over when they hit the ceiling, it completes the puzzle. So it's like good for them to fall more and more. Oh, that's so funny. That is so funny. Okay, it's Tetris, people. Um, and wow, see, you just learn new things every day in the witness. Literally learn new things every day. Um, and right off the back of that, we're going to appreciate a very beautiful quote by Feynman.
A poet once said, "The whole universe is in a glass of wine." We will probably never know in what sense he meant that, for poets do not write to be understood. But it is true that if we look at a glass of wine closely enough, we see the entire universe. There are the things of physics, the twisting liquid which evaporates depending on the wind and weather, the reflections in the glass, and our imagination adds the atoms. The glass is a distillation of the Earth's rocks, and in its composition we see the secrets of the universe's age and the evolution of stars. What strange array of chemicals are in the wine? How did they come to be? There are the ferments, the enzymes, the substrates, and the products. There in wine is found the great generalization. All life is fermentation. Nobody can discover the chemistry of wine without discovering, as did Louis Pasteur, the cause of much disease. How vivid is the claret, pressing its existence into the consciousness that watches it. If our small minds, for some convenience, divide this glass of wine, this universe, into parts, physics, biology, geology, astronomy, psychology, and so on, remember that nature does not know it. So let us put it all back together, not forgetting ultimately what it is for. Let it give us one more final pleasure. Drink it and forget it all. Richard Feynman, 1963.
So, I mean, I should have saved all my kooky talk about like the bacteria and the vibes of this place and the piecemeal modular nature of science and the NASA like science question themes for this audio log, because you guys can see what I mean now, right? This audio log is a total ode to the modular and like wide-ranging nature of the scientific project, that it's looking at all of these different ways of understanding the world, which, as Feynman reminds us, is ultimately a unified thing, right? Like there's nature doesn't know
right,
it.
the world is unified. We're putting all the little
Yeah,
categories on it.
we're the people who are like making these abstractions and stuff, but we have this powerful ability to like break everything down into all the little pieces and reason about them independently, and build little domains, like little bits of knowledge. And one funny thing is like you can build bits of knowledge without understanding what's underneath it, right? Like there's more like islands that are making bridges and connecting to each other. It's not like a tower. Like you don't need to understand quantum mechanics in order to understand chemistry, and you don't need to understand chemistry in order to understand biology, even though there is that like tower of kind of like one abstraction, as the philosophers say, supervening on with the mystical property of supervenience, supervening on the lower levels of like the bacteria. The idea of a bacteria as like a living being and a unit supervenes on the collection of atoms and molecules that are bumping around that make up the bacteria. Um, so Yeah, of course we get that strong diss on the poet at the beginning. Feynman never having too much time, just like in his quote in the church, he's like dismissing the church. In his quote in the he's saying like the Christian God just seems too local. It's like this ridiculous drama. Um, and then in the theater video, he is also dismissive of religion. But here
They could have kept those portions out, but they left those in.
they could have because it's true. Like I mean, the precision of science, right? The poet saying the whole universe is in a glass of wine. This to me reminds me of that audio log, which is one of my favorites in the whole game, of the Arabic or like Persian poet from the entrance to the like Sonic jungle area. There's like a Persian
talking
poetry
about,
quote,
like,
and then there's a Taoist quote. Yes, and the Persian quote is saying, "The glass is transparent, the wine is transparent, the matter is confused." Like we're confusing the glass and the wine. It seems as if it is all glass and no wine, or all wine and no glass. And that being a metaphor for like our relationship to the divine, right? There's like the human soul, and then there's like the soul of Allah, but it's like they're kind of the same, but so it's like maybe it's all just my own soul, or maybe it's all just God's soul, or like where's the boundary between these two similar things? Um, so uh, so I don't know. I think that's kind of fun. The witness has all this wine symbolism,
Isn't there
and
also a section that's like the cup is empty, but it's full of emptiness or full of air?
yeah, that's less explicitly like literally about wine, but yeah, there's a lot of cup symbolism in the witness. There's that whole thing across from here with the guy reaching up to like the grail or the
That's
goblet.
another one. Yeah.
Yeah. But so that's kind of a fun reference. But just like I was talking about earlier, the difficulty with all this meditative type stuff, like that Arabic poet is trying to express something about like the connection between individual consciousness and like divinity, or like the kind of fire that illuminates the universe or
And
something.
yes, you could write a 200-page, very explicit detail.
No, but even you kind of couldn't, right? Like I'm trying to in this video, but like Lord knows a few of the commenters out there are not understanding what's going on, and it's just like hard to explain what you mean. You can spend like an hour like trying to explain like exactly what you think you mean, and then it just turns out you used kind of the wrong words, and it just didn't come out right, or you're too repetitive, or something like that.
They don't
so
have your background, so it makes sense to you, but
yeah. So it's just intrinsically. I mean, obviously, Feynman says poets don't write to be understood, which is a little bit true because they're trying to write and create an evocative language. Like you might say the witness like wasn't made to be understood in that same sense, right? Like it's trying to make multiple artistic statements at once. It's like doing all these different things. It's trying to create an impression. It's not trying to just communicate. It's trying to communicate like along many different dimensions rather than like optimizing the single
for a
dimension
single
of
clear
like
statement.
yeah.
It's trying to say many things at once.
Yeah. So there's sort of like density and like artistry of communication, which is going on, and but it's also just intrinsically difficult stuff to communicate when you're talking about. I always lament in these videos that I can't talk very well about the mindfulness side of things compared to the scientific side of things because it's just harder to express. So one of the great things about science is that things can be expressed and shared so easily and like hyper precisely using all of the specialized scientific terminology, but also like literally like numbers, photographs, diagrams, experimental values, and things like that. There's this, because it's all about studying the world, you can always find ways to point to the world as a reference, even at like super detailed levels. So anyway, that's just a little bit about science and poetry.
I was going to use entropy as a good example of this because entropy means a very specific, practically an equation in a phenomenon in the world. But that's a wonderful example because entropy has started to take on this very symbolic,
It's kind of mythic thing.
mythic thing, and
Yeah.
people can now use it to express something.
People do all the time. I mean, I have religious feelings about like the sine and cosine waves. So that doesn't prevent you from having these kind of rich worlds of artistic associations around something. The fact that it's clear, right? I mean, meditative experiences themselves can often be quite clear, but even when they are, it still can be difficult to communicate those experiences.
For sure. Yes.
Yeah.
One of the things about the poet is they're saying something very well, very precisely, but not something that is communicated to other people particularly concisely.
Yeah. Go around the outside here. Just before we finish off this area, we got a tour of this.
We haven't even been down here yet.
Yeah. I mean, nor have we finished talking about the audio log, but just to get some new views.
Oh, you have more in the audio? I see.
A little bit more. A little bit. I mean, I think it's nice. So he kind of name checks this, like, hierarchy of different. You know what? We might as well attempt to talk about this. We'll solve all these wacky, hyper slow moving things. So we can open this
like
out.
Summon a boat.
Yeah.
It's gonna be loud.
Oh yeah, sorry. And now this is one of the wackiest environmental puzzles in the entire game. The boat environmental puzzles are their own thing. I don't really know. They're just their own world.
Wait, you're telling me there's a reason that there's this annoying little bit of rock? Oh my lord.
The boat reflects and it makes this shape. Dude, the boat is just so wacky, and so then they just make these environmental puzzles and it just keeps the wackiness going. Boom, look at that. These are some of the last ones that I got. Oh, that's so funny. She's holding it. It's like so much honor going to this hyper derpy boat puzzle. Oh man, hilarious. That's so. They had to put it on a really dumb one because if they had put it on a good one, like the water one that's over here, then people would have been like, "Wow, that must be really symbolic." But when it's on the boat one, it's just like, "Lol." All right, so this is an interesting one. We have we have this cute little single dot platform in the middle. Yeah, this guy rotates around, and there's two of them. And also notice these are I mean there's an environmental puzzle here, but it's a dam. There's like a big metal platform that comes down on one side of this but not the other. This is like a dam that regulates like how brackish this purple area is by like influencing its access to the ocean and filtering the water that comes out. So we'll see. We're going to turn this guy like that. Go like that, but we're actually... Oh, no, not cool enough.
You put
oh, we got to go
three,
straight,
both
obviously.
vertical
Yeah,
and
okay,
sideways. No.
Sorry.
You're putting it vertical and sideways again.
Sorry about that. I'm actually going to hop back on here to complete another, basically a shadow style environmental puzzle where we've got to wait, or this is kind of an interesting merge. So we have the sun angle here that's pulling a similar like color blending
the
trick.
Dark and the light.
Just like when we were in the little Feynman thing. Oh, wait a second.
I
gotta get in the right. Nice. Beautiful purple there. Oh, through the arm again. Nice. Yeah. Oh, can we still make it? No, not at all.
Yeah. No. You're just gonna be, no, you're not trapped. Okay.
No, I'm pretty trapped. But, there's this really nice, like, flowing...
Pretty patterns
stripe
in there.
patterns
you know
here.
why that's happening?
Why?
It's because the waves from the ocean come in
Oh,
and make the
yeah.
patterns of waves on the ground.
Yeah, little dunes and stuff.
Yeah.
Of course, there's also a ton of environmental puzzles,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Sure.
Yeah. All right, so I totally screwed myself by doing that, but we got environmental puzzles, so it's all good.
It's okay. You can talk about the Feynman video.
Yeah.
Or
And we
audio log.
We can blitz it. See, this is what I hate about this area. There's so many little paths, and you just gotta go all around them. And, I don't know. It's a big mess.
I hope you open this door.
I did.
Okay.
All right, we're back. Yeah. So getting back to that audio log, he talks about the kind of tower of interpretations, right? It's this appealing thing. We start with physics at the bottom, which is what he first mentions. Things of physics, the twisting liquid which evaporates depending on the wind and weather, the reflections in the glass, our imaginations add the atoms. Then he talks about geography or geology, the glass and the distillations of the earth rocks, in its composition. We see secrets of the universe's age and evolution of the stars. That's like what happens when you set atoms in motion, right? But it's like basic geology, or it's just like kind of brute force of atoms, like oxygen, there's hydrogen, there's stuff like that.
Stars versus
And then on top of like on top of that sort of like basic like brute forces of matter is the complicated chemistry that evolves, and that he brings up next. What strange array of chemicals are in the wine? How do they come to be? The ferments, the enzymes, the substrates, the products. And then jumping from chemistry to life, there in wine is found the great generalization, all life is fermentation, which I feel like is another reference to the biologicalness of this area, like fermenting wine and stuff. Like these areas are like fermenting the weird bio juice, and they're like, there's a lot of metabolism happening in these different like extremophile pools. So anyways, all life is fermentation, meaning like the metabolism of, all the processes of life are fermentation. Nobody can discover the chemistry of wine without discovering the cause of much disease. How vivid is the claret? I don't even know that word, claret. That must mean like fancy word for a glass of wine.
I think so.
How vivid is the claret, pressing its existence into the consciousness that watches it, and now bringing up consciousness sort of like stacked on top of life, which is a big jump, but kind of part of the scientific, almost like propaganda or like scientistic assumptions that a lot of like people have, including myself in my younger days, is like, oh, like there's nothing special about consciousness. There's no like, life was used to be considered magical. People talked about elan vital, and like they thought that there was like some essence that made bacteria different from just ordinary chemistry. And then we figured out like how things work, and now we think that that's ridiculous, and life is totally just in the physical world. And like consciousness is just an extrapolation of that. Like we'll just knock it out of the park by figuring out some more neuroscience. Like it's like, I was like a pea zombie. Like, how did I not recognize this sort of like what people call the hard problem of consciousness? Like the idea that like it's hard to even imagine how an explanation could be sufficient. Like what the shape of an explanation would look like. It like requires a fundamentally different type of explanation from all of the other explanations of science, because it's like, well, probably comes from atoms in the brain, and I'm like, well, sure, that's a good explanation for how thoughts occur, for like how like information processing happens, but doesn't explain what experience is or where it comes from or why it is like it is, because experience feels like it's this totally different material. Like the wavelength of like red light, as we learned in the color bunker, that has is perfectly well suited to the methods of science, but like the redness of red light is like something that's not found in the ontology of science at all, and that, I guess, that kind of breaks the sort of naive scientistic worldview that I had as a youngin, when I was like, oh, we'll just crack consciousness any day now, just by continuing this process of discovery. But anyways, Feynman just stacks that on top.
You can explain more and more things, but then there's like I don't know what you call that, like a disjoint between the
So-
processes and the experience.
Is claret a type of wine?
It is. I just looked it
It
up.
must be a type of red wine.
It is a type.
So
and
he's
a
literally
color.
talking about the redness of red.
He
How vivid is
is.
the claret as it presses itself into our... Maybe it's just red. Maybe consciousness is just... Maybe red is just better than all the other colors. Red is the fundamental conscious experience. Because
Yeah.
everybody always brings that up. But anyways, if our small minds, for some convenience, divide this glass of wine, this universe, into parts, physics, biology, he mentions them out of order, but he clearly, when he talked about them, laid down the law of like physics, astronomy,
he told them in
geology,
order.
like chemistry, biology, and then what he calls psychology. I would say psychology is not like really addressing the fundamental questions of consciousness, but
yeah.
remember that nature does not know it. So let us put it all together, not forgetting ultimately what it is for. Let us give one more final pleasure, drink and forget it all. Feynman IRL drank too much, so. But
Well, now I have a greater appreciation why this giant red area is the central focus of the color area.
yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. So that's that audio log. It's just kind of laying out that hierarchy of science, that kind of tower of scientific explanations with physics at the bottom and like the mysteries of like human society and abstraction and like like mental experience and stuff at the top. And yeah.
So does this whole thing lower, like go up and down?
Oh yeah. So we climb up here, and
Because there's red staining the edges, so it must go down into the water.
oh yeah, that's interesting. That's a good observation. Let me check that out. Yeah. Some of these guys. Oh, how funny would it be if like the solution was like?
It probably is.
It probably
is.
is.
You gotta think about the world. If you think about the world
yeah.
instead of staring at the panels.
But I think this is like an iterative type thing, right? Okay, so this is... I don't remember this being super brilliant just because it was like kind of easy, so I'm going to try and pay attention and like see what's actually going on in here. First of all, it's kind of funny that you just need to lower this one. You're like, bro, could I please? And after like living through these incredibly tedious mechanisms that are like a pain to... It's like, okay, time for some more tedious mechanisms, honey. It's like... yeah, so it's like I'd love to just lower this one, but instead I have to go on this wacky odyssey. And of course, so you have to pay attention to where you're standing. Of course, you can only see this thing from like these five.
Right,
No,
there's a
don't
thing
give me
in
the
the way.
solution. I'm going to puzzle this
Okay.
out. I told people this is going to be a casual episode. And if I just get stuck here and never complete it, then you guys are just going to have to peek at the little video bar and
no,
notice that
you'll
there's
just
an hour
you just
remaining.
won't get a video.
Yeah.
You'll just give up.
yeah. So anyway, so I can only operate that from like these four and not from this back T shape of the tetromino. And
Okay, those
let's
5
see.
and not those T-shaped 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course I have to obey this rule, which just means that I can put down
You have to
2 at
start-
any given time. But that's funny.
One of those has
Oh
to
yeah,
go.
you know what? There's another guy down here. Okay. So the trick is I gotta put down like these 2 or something like that, except I can't do that because that separates the shapes.
You also can't end because that start position, that start block has to be
Yeah.
up because that's how drawing lines works. And then the end position.
No, not necessarily. Go like that.
Right. Okay. Never mind.
Okay. Alright, so there's 2 entry points here. I can also start from down here. Interesting. Oh, there's a flower in here and it's dyed red because it's glowing red with the I never saw that before. That's so funny. Alright, and now I'm gonna follow your advice of cheating the solution by just putting down the ones that have been clearly dunked in the past. Sweet, but this isn't really helping me out. Can I snipe this? No, very cleverly prevented from sniping it.
There's another one across the way that's been put down.
What?
That one across through.
No way. No, they're all
this,
up here.
This one right here has been put down.
No, it hasn't. I'm
Yeah, it
standing
has.
on it.
I'm talking about the color it's been dyed.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
Alright, how the heck?
You want to put down the one that has access to the panel. So.
Yeah. Oh, I know what we're gonna do. We're gonna do this.
No.
Put down the very middle one. Yep. And then this blocker does not exist here.
Okay,
So I
see.
can transit myself through the center.
Yeah, now you don't need to see the panel.
Which is very fun because I'm putting myself over to the other side, and I'm also like, of course, having to draw the line a different way. It's kind of cool. And then really what I should have, oh no, I have to do this, yeah. All right, and then I get to, okay, so cool, but like not like super transcendent for such a cool little thing. I would have been in the mood for like a giant maze that was maybe like 5 by 5, and you had to really
that this
puzzle
is
it
the
out.
crazy logic area with some incredibly difficult puzzles. You know, they could have.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's always fun to have like a multi-step puzzle. This is kind of a prelude to the super crazy one in the mountain where you're like drawing and redrawing the path that you're gonna walk along. That's really wonderful. I'm gonna do like a whole episode just on that puzzle. But anyways, with that, here we are. We have this awesome mangrove.
Why
Is the purpose of the mangrove the fact that it lines up with her and makes her into a freaking
does she become a
Medusa? Yeah, like a
oh yeah,
like a gorgon or something.
Yeah,
Or like the octopus lady in the Little Mermaid. Not quite. I should get like NVIDIA Ansel and take
just
that
like
shot. That
scoot
would look
yourself
awesome.
over to the side.
It's like a buyout. It would from up here. Let's see if we can. I mean, this would just totally screw us up,
But what? No, I think you would be too high. I think you have to be underneath.
Yeah. But anyways, it's this really neat like mangrove shape, or it's not even a mangrove. It's like a dead
this is
oak
a totally
tree or
regular
something.
tree root that's been exposed. Yeah, it's like an oak tree or whatever.
Yeah.
Those are some weird roots, though. I mean, not the roots being weird, but like it looks like there's a chunk taken out of this root, but it's just the angle we're standing at, I guess.
Yes. Yeah. Well, these are all made from like modular tree parts and the witness. So I've wondered about like why is it feels like such a significant sculpted thing. It's so cool to walk through. It just looks awesome. We'll put it up. And I think one of the aspects of this is interesting. One is like it's really celebrating the block itself and how it's kind of encrusting around this square block. And this the yellow square here looks exactly like the yellow color of all the tetrominoes, and so it feels almost like you can see the little flat yellow squares that we've been stepping on this whole time. And then we get to the end, and what do we get but like a six-sided, folded up, it's like a 3D version. And so there's a little bit of classic Witness like 2D 3D going on here, where we're kind of like finally like unlocking into the third dimension.
I mean, they could have played into that and had you walking up like an unfolded square that then ends in a square.
Yeah, like that would have been sweet, or like have it somehow fold together.
Would make more sense thematically.
Very close to the mountain up here.
I don't really,
Yeah. I think one thing that's emphasizing the 2D 3D is how you're like walking through this tree with all the roots doing like this awesome like gateway effect. And so this is like trees being used to give an impression of three-dimensionality, which of course reminds me of the tree way over yonder in the desert area.
The 2D projection.
And there you have this tree that's like this amazing like branching into the air, and here you have it coming down like a negative version of that, like reaching down into the roots. So I don't know. So there's just like a like that tree in the desert. It's like this eye-catching sculpture that really emphasizes the the three-dimensionality of like this kind of fractal form. So that's one thing that I think is going on here. Then another thing I think is just the, I guess, well, yeah, the emphasis on these cubes is also especially notable because, like, otherwise, like, there's no, like, where is the yellow cube symbolism coming from? You know, partially, like, yellow is this kind of tutorial-y color from the castle area, but, like, it's really coming from here. And the notion that you're gonna, like, add all these things up, you know, these are, like, additive. They're little bits. They're scientific bits. It's funny for, like...
It's a building block.
Yeah, but, like, why... Like, it feels kind of, broken, almost, for, like, this mechanic... It's got all the little tetrominoes drawn all over the box. For this mechanic from this one place to be then, like, well, then how come, like, that one in the keep is also referencing the tetromino area? Like, it ought to be referencing the keep or whatever, you know, but they're all these yellow cubes. Like, that seems kind of funny. Like, they should be, like, black and white cubes, or, like, hexagons, maybe, to represent that you're collecting them, you know, from the tutorial zone. But I think, and, you know, maybe
Why
this...
are they all identical?
Well, or just, like, why are they referencing this spot? Like, usually the witness keeps things very zone by zone, you know? You know what I'm saying? It'd be like, as if they all had, like, a giant, like, upside down Y on them from the quarry area and, like, the forgiveness mechanic. Then it'd be like, but that's like from the quarry, you know? So, like, why is he here, you know? Like, there must be some aspect of, like, forgiveness or, like, imperfection or, like, trinity godliness or something that is, like, intrinsic to all of these, even though the mechanic is just in the quarry.
Yeah.
And so I think, again, maybe reading too much into this, who knows, but, like, look at all those yellow squares, bro. I think that that this is kind of communicating the fact that getting all the blocks and doing all the panel, you know, it's declaring these guys to, like, the boxes themselves, the part where you're piecing things together and getting, like, the 11 different areas of the witness, and then you're slowly unlocking. You have to count the right number of tetrominoes that it takes to, you know, to get in. It's like this completionist kind of stamp collecting thing. And that is totally on the side of, like, this kind of logic and science theme of, like, iteratively building up the understanding, taking the understanding from the different parts of the island. I mean, all of the witness is about taking different ideas and trying to build them together into like a cohesive picture. But the, like, collecting lots of little areas, like, even the irrelevant one that you don't like maybe you hate the sound jungle, but, like, you get it anyways just because it's part of the whole thing. And that's the whole attitude of, like, the panel puzzles in the witness versus the attitude of the environmental puzzles is, like, the environmental puzzles don't care if you don't get this weird shadow one on the rotating thing. It's about each
experience.
Yes, it's, like, about each experience, and it's this holistic thing. So anyway, so I think partly the yellow color here is sort of, it's doing a 3D 2D thing. And so in a way it's kind of pulling you back towards the world of, like, real experience and stuff.
Right, stop
but
looking at the 2D little model on the paper.
Yes, yeah. Look at, like, the real object. But it's also, you know, it's also kind of declaring allegiance. Like, it's reminding you, like, hey, all the science panel puzzles, you know, even the ones like the reflection area and the shadow area and stuff like that, which are, like, edging a little bit closer to the environmental puzzles, they're all basically on the side of, like, being completionist and putting all the pieces together and not having, like, giant, you know, super realization experiences.
I'll tell you my interpretation. It's a cube coming out of a trunk because this whole area is about science breaking down the world and trying to find these fundamental things that have in common in order to understand them, in order to put them together, in order to manipulate them or whatever, in order to understand the world. And so it's literally just saying, like, hey, this is about science, but it's also about understanding the world. In a potentially poor way, but
like it's
about
a dead
that.
tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you also have
like,
this...
you don't understand the life part, but you understand, like, the fundamental
Yeah.
like the skeleton of it, right?
And the roots are interesting how they're kind of coming together, right? Like if this was a living tree, it would be like pulling nutrients from all of these different roots, and they all come together into one thing to form this cube, or the living body of the tree.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like all these different fields of science, all these different like little bits of knowledge
They're
that
all
the
building
puzzles are
up. They're
teaching
all
you.
foundational. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of it's like Feynman saying, what was that bit of the quote that. Uh, Remember, if our small minds for some convenience divide this glass of wine, this universe into parts, physics, geology, biology, astronomy, psychology, and so on, remember that nature does not know it. So let us put it all back together. And so I feel like these roots are kind of like they're putting all the threads together. It's a symbol of like unifying
And
things.
why wasn't
After this area, which is all about division, like you literally can't cross it because there's so many freaking little dividers and stuff. And like the lakes have been divided up, and there's like the different puzzle sequences. Like this is kind of like a real museum of like all these little micro distinctions between the different panels and what they're teaching you and stuff.
Right. Like this is where this rule applies. That is where that rule applies.
Yeah, the above ground and the below ground stuff, and then so. But
and,
then it's putting it all back
And there's a
together.
reason that the witness did biology is because science applies to all parts of the world, and if you do like, I don't know, atoms and chemistry, then people have already got a pretty good idea that like, oh, that's this abstract world, like that's just science stuff, that's kind of disconnected from the real world. And this is like, no, like science does interact with the real world to an extent.
Yep. Let's see what's through here.
More puzzles.
More puzzles.
Just what the doctor ordered.
Yeah. It's funny, why is it giving us like a test on our... I don't know, like the only way to come through here is to... Oops.
Is to
Is to
complete
remember
everything,
your
yeah.
right hand and your left hand. Oh, that's funny. It's same... It's
Same
like a...
answer.
Yeah, you're getting that...
Look, the colors even invert.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay, never mind, I'm an idiot. What?
Oh, that's not the
We
same
gotta
answer.
take it out. Because they gotta be connected.
Oh.
And it's gotta... Wait.
Eh?
Wait a second. Wait a second here.
You just rotate it the wrong way. You just gotta take the L out from...
Yes, you have to actually remove it properly, so this would work. Alright, that's very fun. So here we're like separating it from an absence, and then here it's non-mirror reversed. You have to cut out the empty L.
There's no
That's
way
cute.
for these to be identical.
Yeah, you're doing sort of like a transposed shape. Yeah, there's definitely no way for these to be identical. But yeah, yeah. I guess this is referencing like if you had a square like this that would just fill the entire map with squares, and then you had a bunch of these guys, you would have to cut them out like in negative. Like if there was like a pair of two here, then like you'd have to like come down here and like cut out a little 2, but it would have to be in that shape, even though the 2 would be in the enclosed area. So that's kind of funny that you're like cutting out negative shapes.
Hmm.
Right.
And the
Cute stuff.
reason that it's doing it a little bit is because you're going from outside
Oh,
to inside.
yeah, maybe
Yeah.
so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just a little another door.
Having more negative space games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sweet. Well, that has been this episode, as promised. Long, meandering, chill, talking about like random different topics, but hopefully also informative, definitely colorful, and yeah, I will see you soon for another episode of Examining Witness, which may be the amazing revelation of the symbolism of the statues, which is a whole long, complex rant. But maybe I've already uploaded that, and then you've already seen it. So, yeah, we can complete some of these environmental puzzles here, which are like really beautiful. It's all gonna go through our arm, so that's cool. Celebrating. So it's not a joke. It's really celebrating these guys. And tragically, it doesn't allow me to snipe it. I can't make it in there. But needless to say, if you if you rotate the other one to close, then you can complete this guy. And then if you're real clever and you get them halfway while you sprint up here,
Yeah.
maybe we'll try and do that just because it's fun. Then you can get the middle one.
Oh, you can really step down on it from there.
So I guess while we are, that's funny, little bits of broken steel and stuff like that here. While we're waiting for this environmental puzzle, I would just like to thank all you guys for watching these Examining the Witness videos. It has been really fun to go through with these. I've been talking over and over about how this has been such a casual episode, but I do hope to eventually return to slightly more serious episodes, and maybe much more like fancy and well-produced episodes. That's so fun how it circles the little
Don't let it
independent.
get cut off.
So I've been talking about how I want to return to more complex episodes in the future for some of the really crucial areas of the island. Like obviously the whole ending of the game, I want to do like a super, whiz bang breakdown of the areas in the mountains and like the different secret ending and stuff like that. At the same time, I am a busy person with a lot of things to do, and once upon a time I took a 3-year-long break from making these videos before I was able to get back to them. So I would love to kind of hear some feedback on like what exactly you guys are interested from the different areas. Like how much do you want an episode about the town? There's a lot of really good audio logs in the town, so we're gonna do that. I don't know.
We're gonna do everything, but what?
But it's gonna take forever, and I'm not actually gonna get around to doing it, right? So doing these kind of like more casual episodes has been nice because it doesn't take the kind of like intensive preparation. Like my dream in The Witness is to like make a like really nicely produced video that's like, I mean, I wouldn't have the skills to make a video as cool as the Electron Dance one, but like kind of approaching that caliber, and laying out my kind of overall take on the game in in like a concise way. Like I would like literally write out like an essay so that I could read it and not just be like stuttering and repeating myself and stuff, and try and have like a really condensed like sort of lecture style thing.
The essence.
Ideally I would kind of like base it like it would be like mimicking the style of the Secret of Psalm 41 video from like the secret ending of The Witness, when Brian Moriarty talks about like eclipses and Shakespeare and Mirror Masquerade and all that, so I would just like love to do something like that, but also like that would probably take me like 50 hours, and realistically I'm just not going to be able to. So probably the best I'll be able to manage is like doing slightly more prepared versions of like this style of video for the ending of the game, because after all, like people who really want to understand what The Witness is about can just play it, or they can just sit down and watch this an hour long series of Examining the Witness. But if you, like me, would feel a desperate need for a super cool, highly produced, fancy video, or would like love to have like a definitive thing that you could like send to your friends to either like convince them that The Witness is a good game finally, yeah, or to like explain to them like the big picture mysteries of the universe in like a Secret of Psalm 46 package that's like somewhere between like 20 minutes and an hour long, then I don't know, I will probably start beseeching you guys for like, if you want to support some sort of Kickstarter, Patreon type thing, just to sort of like justify to me, like help make it like possible for me to spend an objectively unreasonable amount of time making, because like
Even further
I
than
know
you've already gone.
it's like I know I shouldn't do this, but I really want to. So like if you guys want to like pitch in to tip the scales, then like I'm not gonna fight that. And also of course I've been thinking about like what videos I might make after I finish up with The Witness. There's a bunch of other interesting games and things out there. So I might start talking about that at the end of some of the videos, or like putting like random polls in the description for like, hey, do you guys want to hear about Outer Wilds or Edith Finch or whatever.
BioShock 2.
Yeah, BioShock 2, which is the best BioShock game, underrated. So anyways, thanks for being on this wild ride with me, and hopefully we get to keep making cool stuff for a long time to come.